no, it just rained and I had recently just cleaned off the rust off my pruners. So I'm gonna have to do it again. Dang it. Oh no, it's okay. I picked up more supplies for that. But here in the center, but here I also have a potting bench. Really quick, I'm going to give you a garden seed starting table tour. And I'm going to tell you the products that are on there, where I purchased them from, and what I recommend them, yes or no, and why. Okay, so on the bottom left, I have some large containers from Bootstrap Farmer. And these I purchased for plants that have really big root systems or plants that get big really fast that I don't want to have to up pot too many times. Things like pumpkins, cucumbers, maybe even tomatoes. I think that's what I used it for last. I started my tomatoes ahead of time and then I transplanted them into here and they got huge. Now, would I do that again? That's a whole other story. But would I recommend these? Yes. Number one, I like that they are pink. They're very, very cute. I wish that they had a few other colors to choose from, but the fact that they had color at all was pretty exciting for me because I feel like it just makes it feel more whimsical. But if they had some that were more whimsical, I would love that. I feel like I would stick to those. But they were a little bit more pricey than the large containers that I was used to purchasing, but I can tell why. They are very, very durable. You can feel the, like the quality of the pot itself whenever you're holding it, and they work really, really good. I have no complaints for these. I really, really like them. Just keep in mind that they do take up a bit more soil. If we move up to the second layer of this potting bench, I have some 6 cell trays that are also a lot of different fun colors from Bootstrap Farmer as well. And these are super, super cute as well. I like the fact that they have color because I just love having that in the garden. As you may or may not know, I love whimsy, especially in the garden. And I feel like working in a garden or working with a garden is the best way to create very whimsical spaces. And I love adding pops of color whenever I can, and I like experimenting with a little bit more color. And so when I saw that they carried these little 6 cells, I was overjoyed because they look so freaking cute, and they are so freaking cute. I really, really like them. I wish they did have a few other color options though, a few more other maybe like whimsical options. Now I know maybe that's not maybe it's better to just keep it simple, but because I love things that are super, super cute and whimsical, I feel like we could totally make a whole other collection or have other colors that are maybe a little bit different. For example, I wouldn't personally choose that shade of blue or the orange or the purple. I did like the pink. And I wouldn't choose that green either. See, I feel like the tones I would choose would be completely different, or maybe have it in different shades, like have the blue collection, the green collection, the purple collection, and have them in different hues. This is ridiculous, isn't it? They're just seed starting little trays, but this is the stuff that I think about constantly where I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish that it looked like this. That would be so cool. Anyways, when it comes to these, aside from the color, the other thing that I wish was different is the bottom portion where you can poke the little plug out of the seed cell. Because with these, usually whenever I'm going to transplant the little seedling into the ground, I flip it over, I kind of hold onto the soil and the top of the plant with the palm of my hand, like my hand is completely open and then I kind of hold onto it. And then sometimes when it's well rooted in there, or sometimes when, I don't know, for some reason it just doesn't pop out, I have to push the bottom and then that helps move it forward and then I'm able to pop it out and put it into the soil. I have no idea if this makes any sense or if I'm describing it properly. But with these, one thing that's really difficult for me is actually poking the hole because my fingers are so chubby. They don't fit in there. I feel like I have to use my pinky. And so I just wish that that was a little bit wider, or there was some way to make it easier to poke the plant plug out of the seed starting tray.
Man, that was a mouthful. These were also a little bit more of an investment. I feel like they're not as thick as the bigger pots, but they are still very, very good quality and I like them. They are on the smaller side though. So one thing to keep in mind with these is if you start your seedlings in these, make sure that they don't dry out. With the bigger pots, if I forget 1 or 2 days for whatever reason, I'm not too worried. They'll still be fine because they have so much soil that it just doesn't dry out quite as fast. But with these, I have to be very vigilant about watering them often because if I don't and I skip a day, they can completely dry out and then I risk losing my seedling. So would I recommend those? I would if you have small hands and you like the colors. I mean, they work pretty good. But would they be my number one choice? No, but if they were different colors and then the little opening at the bottom was a little bit bigger, I feel like I would be obsessed with these. And maybe if they were just a teeny tiny bit taller. But maybe now I'm just like poking at everything, you know. Next to those, you can kind of see them. They're black and they are from Epic Gardening. And these have 4, I don't know, what do you call them? Cells to a tray. So they're a little bit bigger than the colorful ones next to them, than the 6 cells, but they're not as big as the ones underneath them. So these I feel like are a very good just go-to. So for example, if I'm starting things like peppers or what else? Eggplant, even just my tomatoes, I'm gonna start them in these black ones. If I'm doing a lot more like flowers or herbs or something like that, then I'll probably start them in the smaller ones. But for these, I don't want to have to but with these, I don't want to have to up pot them so quickly. And at the same time, I don't need the plants to get super huge because they're going to be transplanted shortly. And these I really like, honestly. I feel like the quality is really, really good. I like the fact that they have the same slits as the ones from Bootstrap Farmer, so that helps to do that air pruning stuff to keep the roots a little bit healthier and stop them from coiling around. And then what I really appreciate about these is the fact that at the bottom, the hole to be able to push the plant, you know, out of the seed starting tray is so much bigger, which is so much easier for me to work with. And I think that's probably why I gravitate towards these containers, is because I feel like they just work really, really good. I like the shape of the plant as it comes out too. These are a little bit more square, whereas the other ones are a little bit more triangular. And I don't know, I feel like I like these better. Like the plants just feel heavier in my hands. The only thing I wish was different is that they came out with a little bit more options, like a little bit more different, I don't know, collections of different shades or tones or hues or something like that. Something that'll make me feel like, oh, I really need that. For example, you guys know green stalks? I have seen those around YouTube in the gardening community for years, and I never ever felt like I really wanted to buy a green stock for myself until I saw that they came out with pink ones, because in the past the other colors were like, I mean, they're fine. They're not something that makes me feel like, oh my God, I need that in my garden. But when I saw the pink ones, I was like, oh, that's cute. I really like that shade. But then what made me feel like, oh my God, I really need a green stock now, is when I saw that they had a collection that was pink, but it had a basket weave texture on it. And it was so beautiful. It just looked so whimsical and cottagey and soft and romantic. And when I saw those, I was like, oh my God. So literally, that is the next big purchase that I'm going to do eventually, or at least it's like the one of the top purchases on my list currently, is to get some of those pink basket woven green stalks. The ones that are just flat, I mean, they're all right. They're cute, but the one with the texture is the one that got me, because that small detail made the world of a difference between me feeling obsessed with that product versus not. You know what I mean? So that's what I wish was different about these. Would I still repurchase them though? Yes. And honestly, I kind of want to try out some of their other sizes because I really like those a lot. I just wish that they came in more like variation or shades, something to make it more fun, make them stand out. And then when we move over to the other half of the potting bench, I just have a lot of random seed starting stuff. First, there's a lot of white and black trays. And these are what I put underneath of the seed starting pots. And this is where I pour my water a lot of the times. Or if I'm watering them from above, which usually I feel like I just put water into the trays and then they just soak it up. But if for any reason I need to water them from the top, which wouldn't really happen. But anyways, this just kind of holds the water in place so that the plants can actually drink it up and it doesn't just run off. You know what I mean? And it also makes it easier to carry the pots from place to place because you have each of them on a tray that you can just carry from one spot to the other. On top of, oh, and the black ones, I think are just leftover ones that I used to purchase from the Greenhouse Mega Store. I think they sell different sizes. Honestly, if you want to have them last you for years and years and years, I recommend getting the ones that say something like heavy duty or extra heavy duty because the other ones, the regular ones, work okay, but I feel like they're just not the sturdiest. And sometimes if you have a tray that's too heavy, you don't want the tray to wiggle, or not be quite as stable because then you risk dropping it, which happened to me several times where when I would take them from the garage to outside, there was times where the tray was so flimsy that as I was trying to maneuver them through the door, I accidentally dropped them in my laundry room. And this happened a couple of times. And every single time it was so frustrating because the seedlings would just fall, well, everything would pretty much fall over and it would be a huge mess. My seedlings would sometimes just completely crumble apart. And I was able to salvage a couple of them, but oftentimes the tags would get all mixed up and I hated it. And with the sturdier trays, that never happened because I was actually able to carry everything very securely. On top of that, I have a couple of extra miscellaneous containers from leftover plants that I've purchased at the garden center. So some of them are probably for some small flowering annuals, and then the basket was for some strawberries that I bought one time. And I wouldn't recommend buying the strawberries that come in the pots actually. That time I think I just got ahead of myself. I was like, I know I can't find strawberries anywhere else right now because it's not the time to plant strawberries, but I have decided that I really want a strawberry plant and I think it was like sometime in the summertime. It was, or maybe not in the summertime, maybe late spring or something like that. Definitely not the time for strawberries in the low desert of Arizona. But for some reason, I was like, oh my God, I really need one. Maybe I was going through my summer blues, okay? Or I was getting the summer blues because summers here are miserable. Either way, I bought one. Did it make it? I think eventually I wound up transplanting it into the garden beds. And but I think, I'm not 100% sure though, because I might have just died in my grow tent. I do remember at one point the whole container just looking super sad. So I wouldn't recommend getting those. A better bang for your buck is actually to buy strawberries bare root, which means that you buy them maybe in garden centers or you can also purchase them online and they come to you without any green anything. They just look like these weird long brown spiders, but they're bare roots. They're just the roots of the strawberry plant that are asleep. And then you put them into the ground. You have to plant them, but don't plant them too deep. Otherwise, they don't like that and they might not grow. But if you plant them at the proper height, then in the spring you'll get some beautiful strawberry plants. And then those will just continue to multiply. And those are so much cheaper because you can buy them for a fraction of the price. For example, if I paid about $15 for this basket of strawberries, which probably came with about 4 or 5 strawberry plants in it, I could get about 25 strawberry bare root plants for the same price, if not more strawberry plants for the same price. So I would recommend that a lot more. Next to that, at the very, very top, there's 2 different types of containers. Some that are a little bit more like grayish, blue, green, and then some that are more of a beige color. And those I actually remember buying at the 99-cent store. Do you guys remember the 99-cent store back when it used to exist? Oh my gosh. During the springtime, I used to love going to see their spring section. That's where I purchased the galvanized wire for some of my DIY trellises. And um, I'm pretty sure there was other stuff that I bought there. Or did I just look at it? I mean, I remember buying a lot of stuff at that store and I loved walking through the aisles, but it was dangerous because you walk in there and even though it says 99-cent store, everything was not a dollar. Some things were a little bit more, some things were quite a bit more. And so you could walk out of there with a pretty hefty receipt. But I love the fact that it carried so much variety of stuff. But I especially loved the springtime when they had a bunch of different pots. And a lot of the times they had really, really cute pots. I think something else that I really miss about the 99-cent store is how decked out their aisles would get during the holidays. Like for Easter, Valentine's Day, Christmas, Halloween, just about every decoration I could think of and a bunch that I could never even imagine existed, I would find there. And I loved going through all other different gardening pots because a lot of the times they had so many cute, whimsical things. And I didn't purchase a whole bunch of them, but I liked knowing that I had a lot of options whenever I went there. And these two pots I actually bought there one time. And I actually think I bought them so that I could use them in the grow tent. Yeah, because the suburbs usually make me so miserable in the low desert, honestly. It gets so hot and arid, and I just want it to be over as soon as possible. I sweat so much, and it is so uncomfortable for me to leave my house. I immediately feel a little bit of panic set in, and it's miserable. But I have a grow tent in my garage where I start all of my seedlings for my garden for the entire year. So I'll start a bunch of tomatoes there, peppers, fig cuttings, and the garage has an AC unit in there so it stays nice and cool in the grow tent. And I freaking love it. And one time I was like, you know what would be so cool if during the summertime I started growing an entire little vegetable garden in my grow tent because then I could still garden but do it on a very very small a very very small scale, basically like tiny gardening. Oh my gosh, imagine. And getting like super creative with it. Oh my gosh, making just tiny gardens that are still productive is so freaking cool. And I wanted to do it in a way where I wouldn't just rely on hydroponics, even though hydroponics are really cool as well. But I wanted to do it like an outside garden, but in my garage. And so that's why I started buying these types of pots at the 99-cent store after spring because they would usually get discounted. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, so I'm going to start buying a couple of these every single time that I go. That way I build up a small collection and then I can use all these different sized pots for my little grow tent garden experiment. But I never got around to it. During the summer, I just got so busy with editing that I completely forgot, and that's why those containers are there. And then if you move down and you look at all of those black nursery containers, that is evidence of a serious tree buying problem with me, okay? Look, that is my addiction, is of buying trees, fruit trees in particular. And it's not that I don't like ornamental trees, but I think when I have such limited space, I can't just have something that looks pretty. It has to be a little bit more than just pretty for me, personally. Unless it has like huge sentimental value, I don't have a lot of space to work with, especially because my house was a new build. And I remember when I was a kid, houses being smaller, but the yards were so huge. And now I feel like if you ever come across a home for sale that has a massive yard or even a large yard, that's like a miracle because they don't make houses like that anymore. And so mine came with this really small backyard, but I'm still so grateful for it. And I work with what I have and I use a lot of like illusions to make it look a lot bigger than it really is through I feel like I'm going off on a tangent, but I do that. But I do that because prior to this house, our last home that we had purchased was a townhouse, and it had 0 yard anywhere. There was barely any space behind the like 3-story tall townhouse to put our garbage cans. And that was it. It had like 4 rooms, 4 bathrooms. It was 3 stories tall, and it just wasn't the home for us because I wanted to be outside. I wanted to have some space. So coming from that to this house, this yard felt massive to me when we first moved in. And then I got into gardening and I was like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, I have way more than enough space." And after a couple of months, I was like, "Yeah, we're going to need a lot more than this." Um, so to work around that limited space, I plant a lot of fruit trees inside of containers, inside of larger containers, and I'm talking 15 to 25 gallon containers. And these that you see right here are most likely 3 gallons, 5 gallons, or 10 gallon. I think there's like one 10 gallon container, or no. I think there's one 7 gallon container. Usually I buy the smallest trees possible, and those are the black containers that you see in the front, those square ones. I if I could just purchase one tree at the nursery and I had an unlimited budget and there was one tree that was huge, that was like 25 gallons, big, or I could purchase that exact same fruit variety. Everything else is the same about the tree, except it's smaller and it's planted in one of these little square containers. I would 100 times over choose the small little container, even if I had the budget to buy either. And the reason for that, is I feel like whenever I plant really small trees inside of Serendipity, they thrive so much better and faster when I plant them as smaller seedling trees. And I think the reason for that is because they're so young that they kind of jump back a little bit better from the stress of the heat and just adjusting to their new microclimate. Because before coming to Serendipity, whatever tree lived in this little container was probably somewhere where the conditions were a lot more ideal than it is here in the low desert, because this place is basically hell. So whenever I plant those trees in there, if they're on the smaller side, usually they can adapt a little bit better. And because they're a lot younger, then they then get used to the conditions of Serendipity. And I can see that in the tree itself. Plus, there's been times when I purchase fruit trees inside of the 5 gallon pots. And when I go to plant them, the pot is pretty much all soil, and the tree itself has the teeniest, tiniest root system. Sometimes it's still even in the shape of these square small pots. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I just paid like an extra $30 or $20 or however much extra they charge you for a bigger pot with more dirt. It's ridiculous. So whenever I find the tree variety in these small ones, those are the ones that I go for. And um and I personally really like them. And then once I've planted the tree, I like the fact that I can keep them and I can use them for other propagations. Like fig trees, for example. I love experimenting with fig trees and propagating them. And if I hold on to all of these extra containers, if I ever want to give any tree propagation away or grapevine propagation or whatever the plant is, I can just give them away. And it's easier to do that because they're not and it's easier to do that because they're just extra ones that I'm reusing. Anyways, next to that, oh, by the way, you can still see all the tags. By the way, you can still see some of the tags on those containers because they are just left over from the plants that I've bought in the past. But next to that, I have my fertilizer, and this is probably fish fertilizer, is what I'm pretty sure it might be. And that I like to use to feed all of my garden pretty much whenever it really needs a boost. For example, if the weather has cooled down slightly or given us a break, I don't do it if it's really, really hot, because if I give this to my plants, they're gonna start growing. And during the summertime, Serendipity purposely kind of shuts down or goes on standby mode because it's in survival mode. And then once fall starts coming in, and we are no longer experiencing deadly heat waves, then the plants start to produce again and they start growing like crazy. And if I give them some of this fish fertilizer during that time, they they grow so fast. It's unbelievable, honestly. But the one downside to it is it stinks so freaking bad. Like it smells so bad to the point where you have to be prepared because that stench gets on everything. There's been times when I go outside and I use this fish fertilizer, and then when I come back inside, no matter how much I scrub, I feel like I can still smell it on me. And on top of that, my garden, and I feel like honestly, sometimes even the whole neighborhood stinks like fish for like 2 or 3 days. So I don't know, you guys. This one, would I recommend it? Uh, I would because it works, but I would just say, you know, just think about when you're going to use it. But for me, because I have so many neighbors very close by, since our properties are right up against each other, I feel bad using it too often because it really does stink. And I want people to be able to go outside and enjoy their yards or their homes whenever they're able to, because usually in Arizona, people are able to enjoy their backyards a lot more at night. One thing that I found so interesting is seeing how many backyards had string lights, because during the summertime I just hear neighbors outside laughing. They're playing with their dogs, their kids are out, and they do it once the sun is already starting to go down, because even at night it's like in the 90s some days. So I'm careful about when I spread this around Serendipity because I want people to be able to continue doing that during the summertime. Then if I move up to the top of the potting bench, on my left, I have a worm poop sifter. But to make it sound cuter, we're just going to call it a worm castings sifter. But in reality, it's just a worm poop sifter. And I made this out of, I think it was like 2x4s or maybe 2x3s that I had most likely left over from another project, because I doubt that I would have planned ahead far enough to pick them up for this particular project. But I think that's what I might have used it for. Or you know what? No, I know what this was from. I I am pretty sure that this was from the seedling table that I made, where I just wanted to be able to put all of my starts for the season so that I could just, have them somewhere in the yard. Anyways, I have a video on that up already, but I think at one point when it just wasn't in use anymore, in a moment of frustration of just wanting to do something for the garden when it was really hot, I cut off a chunk of it because I had made this table that kind of looked like a ladder. So I just cut off one of the ends to make the table a little bit shorter. And then I think I started using it. And I think I started using that to sift the poop of my worms. And you might be wondering, why were you sifting the poop of your worms? That is very odd. And that is because it's garden gold, honestly. When worms leave their worm castings behind, those worm castings are full of so many nutrients that garden beds love, that enrich garden beds so much and help the plants grow a lot more as well and help them to be healthier and all of that. So, um, but I want but when I made this, I was more concerned about getting the worm poop and collecting it and making sure that the worms didn't go through. That way, and making sure that the worms wouldn't go through. That way I could put them back into their worm bins and then have them eat and eat and eat and poop and poop and poop so that I could collect it again and spread it on the garden. And this helped me to basically just sift it so that I would only get poop and no worms in the stuff that I was spreading. This I definitely would recommend if you want to go that route. Plus, I feel like you could use it for a lot of other things in the garden. Sometimes you just need to sift soil for whatever reason. Maybe if you're starting seeds and you want the potting mix to be super fluffy and not have any big chunks, you could use this for that as well and just sift it through to get it nice and fine. And the cool thing about it is that it was a DIY project, which required very little wood and then a piece of chicken wire and then some of those, I think they're called poultry staples, chicken hen staples. I don't know. There's some sort of staples that I bought at Lowe's, and then I just attached them Oh, and then I just hit them with a hammer and attach the chicken wire that way. Or it's not chicken wire, it's that other stuff. They're like little squares, but it looks like chicken wire, but it's not. Dang, what is it called? Anywho, that's what this is made out of. And then above that, you can see what I used to use as a bird fountain. I don't know, I think it might have been for fruit. I picked it up at the thrift store. And on the bottom, it says it was from Pottery Barn. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to use this in my garden. And I think eventually it might have broken. I don't exactly remember. But I started using it for the birds, but it was so shallow. The birds did like going in there and basically just hopping around. And they use it from time to time. And I just thought it was really cute. But the bad thing about it is that it was so shallow that it gets so hot in Arizona, in the low desert specifically, that the water would evaporate very, very quickly. So I had to refill it many, many times a day. And eventually, I think I just forgot and stopped doing it because it got so hot. I didn't want to go outside anymore. And yeah, that's what that's for. And then on top of that is a little recipe box. This came with a little insert thing in the front where it said recipe, and inside were recipe cards. And I used to use it for that, but I don't know. Eventually, I was like, you know what? I feel like I'm not getting as much use as I could in the kitchen with it. So then I started using it to hold some of my garden supplies because I just really like the shape. And there was a phase where I was obsessed with the color mint green. Maybe I still am. Or maybe now it's periwinkle blue. But it was during my mint phase and I loved it. So I started using it in the garden to house things like rubber bands and little, they're not paper clips, but you know the ones that are black and then they have those little silver handle things that you push and then you can hold a lot of papers together. I had a bunch of those because I liked using those to attach things onto the cattle panel trellis. So if I was attaching things like tulle or something to protect fruit from the birds, I could attach it that way. So I really like that little box. And then next to that on that top shelf, I also have some scissors because those really come in handy whenever I need to cut some twine and whenever I'm building a trellis or maybe if I need to tie something back, they just really come in handy. So I like having scissors in the garden. And then inside of the little potting soil reservoir, there is a little mini watering can. And the reason it's there is because it belongs to one of my gremlins. Sometimes whenever I'm out in the garden and I'm working on stuff, they like to fill up their watering cans with water over and over again so that they can go drown some of my plants. And it's very, very cute. Um, and then next to that, I have my Corona pruners. And these are the pruners that I use for everything. I really like these pruners. This is the brand that I've used for a couple of years. I feel like it works really well. I have always wanted to try the Felco pruners though, because I've heard so many good things about them. I don't know if you've tried them, and if you have, let me know what you thought of them. Are they really hyped? Like, are they really worth the hype like everybody says they are? Or have you tried other pruners that work just as good for a fraction of the price? But I'm so curious to try other pruners to see how well they compare to others. I almost forgot to tell you this, but I feel like it's a very important selling point for this potting bench, and that is that it has a little basin built into it. It works amazing for just filling with potting mix. I usually mix my own, so I mix it up in there, and then I'm able to scoop it into my, I don't know, I'm able to scoop it into the little cells, and I feel like it just makes so much less of a mess. And what I like about it is before I used to scoop it from my wheelbarrow, but when you're bending over and you're starting so many seeds, it can really start to make my back hurt. At least that's me. And with this one, what I like about it is that I can just stand up and do it. Or I usually bring out my stool and I sit at the potting bench and then I just start my seeds. I love doing it that way. The height of the potting bench itself works marvelous for that. And then the other thing I forgot to tell you about is on the right side, you might be able to see two little tools hanging there. One of them is a little kid's trowel. It came in a set of 3. I think it might have been in a little bag or something like that. It was like a little kid's gardening set at Walmart. And I purchased it a while ago.
it was after spring, of course, so everything was on clearance. And when I saw the tools, I was like, oh my gosh, these would be perfect for my gremlins. They were super cute. They came in 3 colors. So each set came with a little blue tool, a yellow, and a green, which is perfect because I have 3 gremlins. And then the next time I went back, I was able to find another one. So I picked that one up too, just so that they had like a second set in case they wanted to use a different tool, because all 3 tools are just slightly different. So they work with different garden tasks and they love them. Before I purchased them, they would just use my tools, but mine were always a little too heavy for them. And these work perfectly for their little gremlin hands. And then the next tool is from another set. I think it also came in a set of 3. And that set I purchased on Amazon. I really, really like it because it has been with me for a couple of years now. I've left it all over the garden. It has never once rusted on me. And when I first got it, it had these like little leather hoops that I can use to hang it on the side of the potting bench. And I love it. I wanted to get some that were all metal because I hate when part of it is wood and the other part is metal, because ultimately, most of the time, either the parts come undone or they become loose or the wood just gets old over time and then it splinters. I just didn't want anything like that, or anything rubber or plastic, because if I were to leave it outside and forget about it in the low desert, that would be either melted or it would over time just start to crack because the sun gets so intense it basically like dehydrates everything. So stuff starts cracking all the time, like the plastic becomes super super brittle. So because of that, I really really wanted to do something that was all metal. And the downside to this is that it can heat up. So if I leave my tools outside during the summer, I can't just go outside and use them because I'm going to burn my hands. So I either have to wear gloves or I have to go find them and then just put them back underneath the shade. But I would rather do that than have to replace them time and time again. Plus, if you don't live somewhere that is like the oven that Arizona is, you probably won't even run into that issue. And I've had these for several years. I bought it as a set, and I think it was very reasonably priced, and I love them. I would definitely repurchase them. I wonder if there's any that are like a gold or brassy color, just because I love warm tones. Anything that wouldn't like peel or wear off over time. I think that would be really, really cute if I could find some gold ones. But for now, these, what are they, like chrome, silver? These work really good. And and they're hanging on the side of the potting bench, because that was a feature that I actually really liked about this potting bench, is it came with like a little strip of hooks on the side so that you can hang your tools from there. And usually I'm hanging things like my dibber and all of my garden trowels and things like that. Because if I don't put them there, I lose them throughout the garden and it's weeks before I ever find them again. Or sometimes I'll misplace them inside bags of, garden products. And then I don't find them until I go to use that garden product again, which sometimes can be months. Maybe I fertilize and then I leave it inside of the bag of fertilizer. And then I'm scratching at the soil with my hands, and I hate doing that because the worms gross me out, even though I know they're my friends. I just don't like the feeling of them in my hands whenever I'm transplanting seedlings. And having my tools accessible is really important, and having them on my potting bench is awesome, because then also if I'm mixing up soil in that little soil reservoir, I can just put the stuff in there. Now let's talk price though. Can we zoom out again? Okay, let's look at this potting bench. It is beautiful, okay? It is made out of, what is it? I don't think it's cedar. I think it's acacia. It's made out of wood, and it is beautiful. But it is $400. It's $399. I did not pay for this because Gardener Supply sent it out to me. I'm going to be completely honest with you, okay? And that's because I have a following, and I think that's one of the perks of being an influencer, is you're able to try all these different products from awesome brands that you otherwise might not be able to buy or might not even think to purchase. And I love this one. But if I did have the budget to purchase it, would I purchase it again? Well, would I purchase it at all? Yes. Even though I got it for free
from Gardener Supply, I would repurchase this potting bench myself if I had the budget because I really, really like it. Now, if I was on a budget, which is what I was planning to do before they sent it out to me, because I was like, I can't afford any potting bench, and I would rather have something that is within my budget that I can customize and make my own and make it fit my needs than to break the bank purchasing something that I can't afford. So anyways, my idea before they sent it out to me was actually to go to the thrift store and to pick out a solid wood, nice piece of furniture that somebody has donated and upcycling that into a potting bench. So maybe either cutting out an area or finding some creative way to add all of the sort of, I don't know, features that this potting bench has, but on a budget. You know what I mean? Like just converting a piece of furniture into a potting bench. Because no matter what, this potting bench, because it is made out of mostly wood, over time it is going to have some wear on it, and it's not going to last forever and ever, even though it will last me a very long time. But if I'm on a budget, finding a really unique piece of furniture either in the thrift store or maybe in a yard sale or Facebook Marketplace, a lot of the times people put stuff for free. You could totally convert some of those things into a really cool potting bench. I mean, something else that might even work, but I don't know, because if it's metal, maybe with so much moisture over time, it might wear it down or get it to rust. But maybe some of those baker's racks, I see them all the time for sale for a very, very inexpensive price. So you could turn just any secondhand piece of furniture into a makeshift potting bench. I think that's I honestly think that's a really cool project that I'd like to do someday, even if I have this potting bench already. Like if I were ever to get like 2 acres of land or something, or 3 acres, but I'm fine with 1 or 2. But if I were to get acreage someday, I would definitely probably set up a few different potting stations. If I had different garden areas, I would love to have DIY potting benches of different styles, but still like maintaining the same aesthetic, which you can't tell right now, but has definitely evolved over time to be a little bit more dark academia. But I know you can't tell right now. Anyways, that's for future videos. But with that said, I'm gonna let you go. This was the potting bench tour. I just wanted to pause here and show you this potting bench because I was like, you know what? I always just sort of like zoom on by, but let me just show you everything that's on here because everything has a little bit of a story behind it. Oh, by the way, you know, something else I really wanted to bring up is the other day I was in a Lowe's and I was looking for some Corona pruners because I wasn't able to find mine anywhere. And I had looked, and at this point I was growing pretty frustrated, especially because I was working on propagating some fig cuttings that I had recently ordered, and I really needed some nice sharp pruners. So I went to Lowe's and I was looking everywhere, headed straight to the tool section first, and I didn't see a single Corona pruner anywhere. Anywhere. And I was like, what? Like, do they have a separate aisle for it or something? And so then I started going aisle by aisle and nothing. And I'm the type of person who never likes to ask employees, especially when they're busy, because I know that I can, but I would just rather try and find it myself. And then if I totally have searched the store and I haven't been successful in finding the item, then I go and I ask for help. So at this point, I was like, I've looked everywhere that these pruners could possibly be. In the garden center, in the tool section, in all of the aisles next to the tool section. Where is it? And then I finally went up to an employee and I was like, I'm so sorry to bother you. Do you guys happen to carry Corona pruners? Because I looked and I wasn't able to find any. And they were like, Corona, okay, let me look it up. And then they pulled out, I think it was either their phone or something, and they started looking it up. And then they told me that they actually don't carry it anymore. They only had these teeny tiny little snips. And I was like, oh, you guys don't have any of the pruners? And he's like, nope. They pretty much put them on clear. The only things that they had left were on clearance, and everything had already been put on clearance, and there was basically no inventory left, and they weren't going to carry and they weren't going to carry Corona anymore. And I told him thank you. I wound up purchasing some Fiskars pruners, but I was kind of like blown away because I've always purchased Corona. And whenever I go to Lowe's, usually they always have mostly Corona tools. And this is the first time that I've gone into a store and they don't have it. So that made me wonder, are people still purchasing it as much as they used to? Because earlier I mentioned how this is the pruner brand that I usually buy, but it's just so odd to me for a Lowe's to not carry them at all. So, anywho, I wanted to tell you that to ask you, do you use Corona and does your Lowe's carry it, or is it something where it's maybe only certain locations, or what's going on here? I'm still a little bit surprised by the fact that they didn't carry it. But anyways, that's all I wanted to tell you. Now with that, I will let you go. Okay, have a great rest of your day. Thank you for joining me.